Hello lovely people, welcome to my channel once again. So if you're new here, my name is Tsungie. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make this t-shirt yarn slippers. This is a size 6 UK size and a size 7 US size. Right, so I'm going to show you how to make this. So before we start, if you haven't subscribed and you like what I do, please do subscribe and turn on your notification bell. So a 7mm hook, some stitch markers and t-shirt yarn. So the t-shirt yarn that I'm using the one that's not too thick, this one here, right? If you have the one that's thick, please use a size 6mm hook. So I'm just going to use my fingers. I'm going to form an X and wrap around. I'm going to take the one in front, I'm just going to lift it. The one in front, I'm going to lift it, and I'm going to grab the one at the back. Then I'm going to hold on to the two and I pull like this, and that is how we form a slip knot. I do my slip knot. I'm going to chain out 20. I want 20, so I'm going to move forwards, go up a little bit, turn my hook to face down and move backwards, and that's how I'll be chaining. So I'm going to chain 20 of this. I've done one, I'm going to do the rest off camera. Okay, so after I do the 20 chains, it will look something like this. I'm going to skip the first stitch, which is this first V, and I'm going to be working in the second stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook inside that second stitch like this. I'm going to grab some yarn, come out with it, so that now I have two loops. I'm going to grab my yarn again and pass this yarn through both these two loops, and that is what we call a single crochet. I'm going to do it once again into the next stitch, grab yarn, come out with it so that you have two loops, grab yarn and pass through the yarn to both those two loops like this. So I've done two. I'm just going to mark the first stitch with my stitch marker like this. Okay, so I want 10, so I've done 2. Let me do 8 more and I come back. Okay, so I've done 10 single crochet. Please count them. Then the next part, we're left with 9 stitches, so I want to do 8 double crochet. So to do a double crochet, I'm going to yarn over, or put my yarn on my hook, insert it into the next stitch, grab some yarn, come out with it, so that now you have 3 loops. Grab some yarn, pass through the first 2 loops, grab some yarn and pass through the second 2 loops. So that's a double crochet. I'll show you again. Yarn over, or put your yarn on your hook, insert your hook inside the next stitch, grab some yarn, come out with it, grab some yarn, pass through the first 2 loops, grab some yarn, pass through the second 2 loops. So I've done 2 double crochets. I want 8, a total of 8, so I'm going to do 6 more and I'll come back. Okay, so I'm back. So if you're lost, we did 10 single crochets and 8 double crochets. So now we're left with 1 stitch. Into this 1 stitch, we're going to do 5 double crochets. So I'm going to do 1, just 1. I want to show you a small trick. Right, so after you do 1 double crochet, move this yarn, move it to the back. It will reduce the hole that you're going to create. Yarn over into that same stitch. We're still in the same stitch, it's just that the yarn is now at the back. Hold it there, do the rest. So we said we want 5, so we've done 2, 3, 4 and 5. Right, I forgot to do something. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to put a stitch marker where we finished the 8th double crochet. So remember, we did 10 single crochets, 8. I'm into the 8th double crochet. Then here we've got the 5. Right, so I'm going to go this way now. Right, so I want to do 8 double crochets. So I'm going to do the first one. 1. Okay, then as soon as I finish, I'm going to put a stitch marker. This will just help you so that you won't get confused. So I've done 1. I want 8 because I want this side to match with this side. So I'm going to do 8 more. Sorry, 7 more. So this is number 2. I'm going to do until then 8. 3. So let me do the rest of camera. Okay, so I've done 8 double crochets. I'm going to do 10 single crochets now. 1, 2. So let me do more until I get to the very end. Okay, so I'm finished. Let's recap. Okay, so we started with 10 single crochets, then we did 8 double crochets, then we did 5 double crochets in the last stitch, then we went the other side, did 8 double crochets, 10 single crochets, and this is where we are. And that is how you finish the first row. This is our first row. We're going in a circle, right? So we're going to move on to the second row. Okay, so I took out the stitch marker in the first stitch. I'm going to go into that first stitch, grab some yarn, come out with it, and I want to do a slip stitch like this. So I'm going to slip this one into this one like this. After I do the slip stitch, so this is creating a stitch here at the middle. I'm just going to chain 1, and that's for the stitch, the first stitch. Okay, after that to the next stitch, and I'm going to do 2 single crochets. So I'm going to do 2 single crochets in the next 3 stitches. So 2 2 2. So 2 in each. Like this. Okay, so after you do that, you're going to do 6 single crochets in the next 6 stitches. So 1 single crochet in the next 6 stitches. So 1 2 3 4 5 and 6, right, like this. Then after we do that, we're going to do 8 double crochets until we get, so we're going to finish the 8th in this one. So 8 double crochets. I'll just do 1 on camera. So yarn over, insert my hook into the next stitch, grab some yarn, pass to the first 2, grab some yarn, pass to the second 2. I'm going to do 7 more and come back. Okay, so I have done the 8 double crochets. I'm going to remove my stitch marker in the 8th stitch, and there's no need to put a stitch marker now, right? So we're now at the crown where we did the 5 double crochets in 1 stitch. So in each of these 5 stitches, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So you're going to have a total of 10. So 2 in each. Just show you 1 double crochet, and you're going to do another double crochet in the same stitch. So you're going to do the same for the rest of the next 4. So 1, you need to do another one. Okay, so alright, so I'm going to do that for the next 3. 2 2 2. Okay, so now let's quickly recap. We started at the first stitch, we slip stitch and chained 1. Then after that we did 2 single crochets in the first 3 stitches. Then after that we did 6 single crochets. Then after that we did 8 double crochets. Then in the 8 stitches. Then after that we did 2 double crochets in the crown, in the 5 stitches of the crown. So here we are. So now we want this side to be the same as this side. So what we're going to do, so I'm going to remove my stitch marker, right? So I'm going to do 8 double crochets in the next 8 stitches. 8 double crochets. So that is number 1. Let me do the rest of camera. Number 2. Right, so let me do the rest of camera. Right, so after you do the 8 double crochets, we're going to do 6 single crochets in the next 6 single crochets. So 1 2 3 4 5 6. Right, in the next 3 stitches we're going to do 2 single crochets in each of those stitches. So 1 2, this is number 2. Okay, so let's do 1 and this is number 2 in the 3rd stitch. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, then into the last stitch we're going to do 1 single crochet. After we do the last single crochet, that's where we finish the second row. We're now going to remove the stitch marker in the first stitch. Okay, so now we're going to do our last row. So into the next stitch I'm going to insert my hook in there, grab some yarn, come out with it, and I want to do a slip stitch. I'm going to slip this one into this one like this. Right, so the next stitch is a little bit tight, so I'm going to chain 1. Right, so in this chain 1 is for this stitch here. Right, so we're going to skip it. So after I skip this stitch, I'm going to go into the next stitch. So we're skipping this one and we're working into this one. We're going to do 2 single crochets into the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2. Going to go into the next stitch. 1, 2. Okay, into the third stitch. 1, 2. Right, after this let me quickly mark where we started. Hold on. So this is the first stitch here. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to do single crochets all the way across until we're left with 4 stitches. Right, so we're going to do single crochets all across until I'm left with 4 stitches. So let me quickly do that. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a tip at the crown here. So in order to keep this pattern very simple, we're just gonna do single crochets like I said until we're left with 4 stitches. So when you're at the crown here, try to do your single crochets and try to like pull so that they're a little bit loose, so you create this loose single crochet that will curve with your thing, right? So that your thing won't curve. So just try to make your single crochets loosish, going with the shape of your crown. Okay, so I'm going to do the rest of the single crochets until I get to the part where I'm left with 4 stitches. Right, so let me quickly do that. Okay, so we are now left with 4 stitches. So into the next 3 stitches I'm going to do 2 single crochets in each of those stitches. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then into the last stitch I'm going to do a single crochet. Okay, so now we're back at the part that where we did the slip stitch. I'm going to take off my stitch marker, insert my hook into that stitch, grab some yarn, come out with it, and I want to do a slip stitch. Right, at this point you can cut your yarn. So I'm going to cut my yarn. So I'm going to pull the yarn and I'm going to pull it out like this. Right, so into the next, so I'm here, right, so I'm going to into the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, going to insert my hook in there, right, grab my yarn, go under with it so that it comes the other way like this. Then I'm going to go into the side in the middle of the stitch and I'm going to grab this yarn here. So what we're essentially doing, we're creating another stitch, right, so that it's flawless. Right, okay, so at this point your shoe is done. Okay, so 2 soles will literally be the same size, one on top of the other side. So So now again I'm going to show you how to do the top part here. Okay, so let's quickly do that. To do the top part, I'm going to do a slip knot like this, and I'm going to chain 13. Oh, let me come back when I'm done. Okay, so I've chained 13 stitches. So into the first row I'm going to do single crochets. Remember how to single crochets all across. I don't want this video to be too big, so single crochets all across, and I come back. Okay, after the single crochets I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2. Into the next row I'm going to do half double crochet. So yarn over, insert my hook into the first stitch, grab some yarn. I should have 3 loops, and I'm going to pass my yarn so yarn over, insert my hook into the first stitch, grab some yarn. I have 3 loops. I'm going to grab my yarn, and I'm going to pass the yarn through all of them. 1, 2, 3. That's a half double crochet, and I'm going to do half double crochet all across. And I come back. Okay, so when I get to the end I'm going to chain 1 and then turn your work. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. We want to do slip stitches into the front loop. So insert my hook into the front loop, grab some yarn. I have 2 loops, and I'm going to slip stitch into the front loop, grab some yarn, and slip stitch. So we're slip stitching into the front loop. So you're going to slip stitch all across and come and chain 1. So let me quickly do that, and I come back. When you get to the end, chain 1 and cut your yarn and pull. Right, so I'm going to use another different color yarn. So I'm going to take my stitch, put it in the first stitch. I'm going to grab some yarn. Grab some yarn, and after that I chain 1, and this is just to attach my yarn. Then after that I'm going to do a single crochet. So grab my yarn into the same stitch so that I have 2 loops, and do a single crochet. Now we're going to repeat exactly as we've done on this. We're going to do single crochets, half double crochets, and 1 line of slip stitching. Okay, so I'm not going to waste your time here. So after you finish the first row of single crochets with the other color, you're going to chain 2 and repeat what we did. Chain 2, then you do 1 row of half double crochets. Then the last row that you're going to do, it's going to be, when you finish that one, you chain 1 and you do slip stitches. So I'm just going to quickly do that, and I'll come back when I'm done with the other. If you've forgotten, please just rewind it. Okay, please do remember that when you're doing the slip stitching, it's at the front loop. It's at the front loop when you're doing the slip stitching. Okay, so when you get to the end, chain 1. So now what we're going to do, we want to slip stitch on this side all across. So we're going to slip stitch here all across, and here going around our thing. So on this side we just want 8 stitches, and here you slip stitch in all the stitches. So just find places where you can just put your hook. 1, you want to have 8, 2 here, 8 on your side, slip stitch on this side, and here you're slip stitching here in the spaces here. So slip stitch all across in these spaces here, and I'll get you when I get to the side, and I'm going to slip stitch like I did this side. So I'm going to quickly do that, and I come back. Okay, when you get to the end, chain 1 and cut your yarn and pull. Don't worry too much that it's not like straight. Don't worry, when we put it on our shoe you won't even notice it. Okay, so it's finished. Let's assemble everything. So we've got our, okay, I've just done here, I've just put my soles one on top of the other. and I've just used my stitch markers to just hold it in place. So here where I've got my needles here, this is the crown where we have 10 stitches. So this is 10 stitches from here to here, it's 10 stitches. So if you remember, after we do the 10 stitches, we've got the 8 double crochets, and that's where we're going to be putting our, what you call it, our lid or our top. So now let's join this. So I'm going to, so these are the 8 stitches, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So I'm going to go into the stitch that's before the 8 stitches, and I'm just going to go into the first loop here on top, and I'm going to go into the first loop at the bottom. The reason why I'm doing this is when I'm joining, I don't like joining them, the 2 loops and the 2 loops at the bottom. It creates this thick what you call it, so, and I don't like it. Okay, so I'm going to grab my yarn, come up with it. Right, so I'm going to go into the first loop of my shoe like this. Then I'm going to go into the first loop of the first sew, and I'm going to go into the first loop of the first sew. Right, so I hope you can see what I did. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the yarn at the bottom here, and I'm going to go up with it, go up the first one, the second one, and up this loop here, so that you have 2 loops. Right, so once you have these 2 loops, I'm going to slip stitch. So we're joining, but we're using slip stitching. So I'm going to go into the next stitch, just the top loop, and I'm going to go to the top loop of the front loop of my first sew and the front loop of my second sew. I'm going to grab the one at the bottom here, come up with it, first sew like this, and up my top here like this. I have 2 loops, and I'm going to slip stitch. So you're joining with those slip stitch. I'm going to go into the next stitch, just the front loop, and I'm going to the front loop of my first of all my sew at the top, and I'm going to go into the front loop of my sew at the bottom. I'm going to grab my yarn, come up with it, 2 3. Now I have 2 loops, and I'm going to slip this one into this one like this. So you continue joining with your with the slip stitches until you get to the end. So let me quickly do that, and I come back. When you get to the end, we're going to join the 2 sews. Right, we're going to join with both loops. So I'm going to put my hook under the both loops like this, and right, so this is so that the thickness, there's not too much of a thickness difference. Okay, so I'm going to do 10. So when we get to the other side, I've done the 10. So I'm going to continue to join the way that I've been joining from the top. This stitch is so tight. Okay, so just the front loop, then the front loop of my sew, front loop of my sew like this. So 3, right? After that, you're going to grab your yarn from the bottom, come up with it, 2 3, right? Then you're going to slip stitch, right? Okay, then you're going to go to the next one, do the same from the top, front loop, grab your yarn, pass to the first, second, third, and slip stitch. So you're going to do that until in both loops like this. Move the stitch markers. So okay, I'm going to join in both all across until I get to where we started. So let me quickly do that. Okay, so I'm going to quickly take off the stitch marker on the last stitch. almost going into my shoe, and I'll do one last slip stitch and I'll pull my yarn, so that one will kind of go inside my hook. And I'm going to go to the back. I'm going to try to grab it and go down with it, and I will come back. You can tuck it inside your thing here, because let me quickly tuck my excess yarns. Okay, so I thought my video is not too big, so I quickly tied and tucked all the loose yarns into my shoe. Actually recommend using a thicker t-shirt yarn like this. It will give you less holes if you're using a size 7. This one was slightly thin than expected, but anyway, the shoe still looks good and it's alright. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. See you in more videos. Okay, bye bye.